So I've been going through some of my tackle boxes, getting everything ready for the season, and I came to my spinnerbait box, which I need to do some work on. You know, a spinnerbait is a bait that I grew up fishing. You know, really for me, when I was younger, probably from, up to almost probably 16 years old, I threw pretty much two baits. It was a spinnerbait or it was a 7-inch power worm. And those two baits were what most of my childhood fishing revolved around. And it was, for the most part, because that's what I got my bites on. It was the most successful bait that I used. And for whatever reason, the bait kind of disappeared out of my arsenal for a long time. Probably because I really got into the swim jig, and I had recently, then after the swim jig, the chatterbait kind of became popular, and I feel like those two baits did a good job replacing the spinnerbait. But over the last couple of years, I have definitely been throwing the spinnerbait more and having a lot of success on it. A really good amount. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous to the point now where I pretty much have one on my rod at all times. And I've gotten a couple of questions about spinnerbaits and just kind of when I throw certain spinnerbaits and if I even still do throw them. So, the answer is yes, I very much do. They have really gotten back into my arsenal. I love throwing them. It's one of those baits that is cool to throw, especially if you're fishing around targets. They're easy to throw. They cast really well. You can bring them through cover relatively weedless. And they're just a fun bait to throw. So I very much do like them, and they are definitely in my arsenal at this point. Hence why I'm going through my box right now. So, I thought I would do a quick video on when to throw which types of spinnerbaits, or at least when I throw my spinnerbaits. And the majority of the time, I would say probably 75% of the time, I throw just a 1/2 ounce, double willow leaf, War Eagle or similar style spinnerbait. I like the War Eagles. I think they're good spinnerbaits. So, something along this line is what I throw 75% of the time. I think you can use this bait in pretty much any type of watercolor and around any type of vegetation or structure. It's a relatively weedless. It works great. Just a general spinnerbait works great. I will switch to a willow leaf with a Colorado blade at the top, like this one, when I get a little bit more watercolor. So, I would say anything from probably about 1 foot to 3 feet of visibility. I'll start working in a Colorado blade. Gives you a little bit more thump. It does rise the bait a little bit more, which generally I don't like, but because of the watercolor, I do like to work in something that's got a little bit more thump. And truly, I pretty much throw bait fish colors 99% of the time. Even in muddy water, I'll throw a white and chartreuse skirt, which in muddy water, that still mimics a bait fish. I very rarely throw, any dark colors, any natural greens and browns. It's pretty much some form of shiner looking color. That just is what works best for me. I really don't have anything more to add on the color portion of it. But when I am fishing really dark water, so if you're fishing really muddy water, you got some recent rains and you've got some mud flowing in, that's when I'll switch to a couple of big Colorado blades, a bright skirt, and I like to throw the orange front blade, even occasionally an orange back blade, but for the most part, this is the combination I'll go with. The orange little Colorado, and then I'll go with a big brass colored or gold colored Colorado on the bottom. This bait just gives off a ton of thump, a ton of vibration. I'll throw a big trailer on the back too, a big, pearl colored boot tail kicker of some form. Just, you're really trying to say, hey, there is a bait here. I'm trying to make a ton of commotion in that really muddy water to draw fish to it. And a spinnerbait is a great bait to throw in those conditions. I mean, we see it on lakes like Grand Lake all the time. I mean, this is like a staple there when the water gets really muddy. So, you know, I'll also throw color blade. The only other time I'll throw color blades like this one, there's 2 times I guess I'll say. One, if I'm fishing for smallmouth, I will throw colored blades all the time. A nice big spinnerbait like this is a great bait for smallmouth. For whatever reason, they react really well to colored blades. Great Lakes, you could be in 15-foot visibility, you still want the colored blades. It's just one of those things. The other time that I will use, that I like to throw colored blades, is when I'm fishing mud lines. You know, if I'm fishing a really clear body of water, like this happens in the Ozarks a lot. I've had really good success with this. If you've you know, got a really distinct mud line where you've got, say, you know, 6, 7, 8 foot of visibility on the clear side, and you got a distinct mud line that is really dark water, a lot of times I'll go with this combination for 2 reasons. One, a lot of times the water under that mud line, which is on the surface, is the clear water underneath. So I like to throw this, you know, right. You want to try to get right on that mud line, right? So there are times it'll be in the mud, so I want the brightness, and there's times it pops out of the mud, it's in the clear water, and it just kind of works great in both conditions. So I will throw this combination, a good, you know, bright painted blades, 2 times. If I'm fishing mud lines or if I'm fishing smallmouth up north in clear water. The only time that I ever go with a single blade, and I probably need to experiment more with this, but the only time I'll go with a single big blade like this, a big Kicker Colorado, is again if I'm fishing super muddy water or if I'm night fishing. This seems to be a really good night fishing tool. I don't do a ton of it, but I do have really good success when I do it with a big spinnerbait with a big Colorado blade. So, you know, it's not something I do a ton of. And my approach to this is simple. You know, I think part of the reason like the Alabama rig is such a good rig is because multiple baits, multiple blades, it creates that school effect. So if I'm going to be throwing a spinnerbait, I'd like to throw as many blades as possible. And you can go out and buy spinnerbaits with 3, 4 blades on it. And I think those do work great. In some tournaments, you are limited to what you can throw. So I usually stick with just the 2-blade spinnerbaits. But I guess what I'm getting at is I like the more flash, the more blades, the better. So I would rather throw 2 blades versus 1 blade. You know, except like I said, in instances where you're fishing super muddy water or night fishing, 1 big Colorado blade will give out more thump than 2 smaller willow blades or a, you know, willow Colorado blade combination. And in order for this bait to run right, you really can't even have another bait in the front because it is a short shank arm. And it's just one of those things. If you're going to throw a really big Colorado blade, it's a single one. So, you know, other than that, the only other time that I will throw a big blade or a single blade is if I'm using a spinnerbait as a ledge fishing bait. So this is an 1 3/4 ounce spinnerbait. It's a really big spinnerbait with a big willow leaf. And the reason for that is if I'm fishing 20 foot of water, I got to keep my bait down there. If I throw 2 blades on this, that bait's going to want to rise higher and it's harder to keep it on the bottom. So I'll go with 1 single blade in that instance just to keep my bait down. Again, if I could get away with 2 blades and fish it in 20 feet of water, I would do it. I just would rather fish 1 blade because I'm more efficient by fishing just this 1 blade. So, you know, that really kind of sums up all of my spinnerbaits. I'm going to add 2 things to this. First, don't be afraid to downsize to a much smaller compact spinnerbait. You know, you compare this to, you know, the War Eagle, you can see how much smaller that is. You know, this little compact, this is a 3/8 ounce spinnerbait, but it's a compact spinnerbait. really can generate more bites than a bigger spinnerbait. And I've had a lot of days where it's just hard for the fish to resist a small spinnerbait. It's kind of similar to a little buzzbait. You know, there are days where an 1/8 ounce buzzbait will get destroyed, but yet a 1/2 ounce buzzbait you can't get a bite on. I mean, that's just how it is. There's times you want to mash the hatch. Whatever it is, don't be afraid to throw small spinnerbaits. They can be really, really good. The last thing I'm going to add is, you know, I said before, I like to keep my colors simple and keep them the color of natural bait fish and forage. And I don't throw dark colors. I don't really throw browns or greens. It's pretty much a white, silver, gold, chartreuse type color patterns. But I like to add, occasionally, I really like to add color to my blades. So let's see if I got one here that's already painted up. I don't see one, but so I'll take these Sharpie paint pens, and if you take a paint pen to a blade, I'll just show you a little bit. That'll stay on there great, and you still get really good flash, but there's times I like to take like a purple or a blue to my blades, especially like up here in Wisconsin or down in Florida, places you've got that coffee colored, tannic colored water. I feel like that color on the blades, a little purple, a little blue, will give a different flash. It's still very much got a chromy appearance to it, but it's got a whole different flash in the water. And I like to do that. So don't be afraid to experiment with blade colors and adding color to your blades. You know, the nice thing with these, the Sharpie stays on great, but I can get that off too. If I wanted to take some, like an alcohol rub to it, I can get that off versus, you know, if you actually powder coat it and paint, all of a sudden you can't really get the paint off. So, just recommending that. You know, these Sharpie paint pens are great for a lot of things, but they really, really work well on spinnerbaits, and you can add some color to it and just kind of play around. But yeah, so that's it. You know, I like to think I keep my spinnerbaits pretty simple, my selection pretty simple, but at the same time, you know, I do use most of the combinations of blades out there, the different variations of blades, and there are definitely times where I think one combination is better than another combination. Colors I'm not as concerned with, but the blades are pretty important in my opinion. So give it a whirl, guys. Let me know what you think. Leave me a like, leave me a comment if you think I'm crazy. If you agree with me, let me know. Subscribe to the channel if you like the tips. I got all kinds of tips coming out. I appreciate all of the support that I've gotten so far, and keep watching. We got videos coming out at least every other day right now. So I'm enjoying it, and I appreciate everyone out there. Thanks for watching.